Can you hear me from here? No? Can you hear me from here now? Okay. Now, one, two, three. Yes? Not really. Obviously, you heard me, right? But I'll try to project my voice as well so that. Can you hear me in the back? Yes? Thank you. All right, so good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for being here. I didn't have any expectations of numbers. I didn't know how many people were going to show up here. This is something that is important to all of us, so welcome. And once again, we're here to try to provide some information. We know that throughout higher education today, enrollments in higher education have declined, particularly in traditionally college-going populations, especially the high school graduate population. And this has impacted a lot of colleges, particularly public higher education throughout the Northeast, and community colleges have been particularly hit hard with enrollment declines, including many in the SUNY system. And so, one of the difficulties with this is that the higher education financing model in New York State is heavily enrollment dependent. Heavily enrollment dependent, and we will see that today. And DCC is no exception to that. And today, what we want to do is at least to Scott Schnackenberger and myself, we're going to do a presentation so that you can get a sense of enrollment, what it's going to look like over what we project it to be like over the next few years here at DCC, and with an understanding that this has a significant impact on our budget, going forward. So with that, I'm going to bring up Scott so he can welcome you and give you his presentation on enrollment.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to briefly kind of set the context that our whole budget's going to have to be built in. And as Milton was saying, the trends are not good ones, and it makes it for a much more difficult budget year and budget years going forward. Okay, so this is just a look at where we've been since 2012 and a projection of where we might be going forward. So over the past 5 years, we've lost 26.8% of our enrollment. These are numbers that are not including the high school concurrent students. So we have well over 2,000 fewer students than we did just 5 years ago. Looking forward, we know that Dutchess County high school graduates are projected to go down an additional 10% over the next 5 years. And that's the main driver in the projections going forward, at least for new students. For returning students, the projections are based on trends from the past 2 or 3 years between fall to spring, spring to fall, and retention numbers. Several different projections go into that, and they're averaged out and smoothed out to show what we may be doing going forward. So as you can see, we're projected to lose another 1,000 students or so over the next 5 years. So that's kind of the context that the budget will be built in. So I've been mostly doing lots of bad news, so I want to go to good news. So the good news for us is we have been having increasing graduation rates, particularly over the last 2 years. So we've been doing better. Our students are getting through more quickly. The bad part of this, unfortunately, is that leaves fewer students to come back. So our returning students numbers have been going down even faster than our new student numbers have over the past couple years. And you can see that in this next chart, which shows as a percentage, the percentage of our enrolled students who are leaving us each year. It was under 15% back in 2012. This year we're projecting it to be 18%. So each year we're having 400 or 500 fewer students to return the next year. So even if everything stays the same, we're going to have a deficit to be dealing with moving into the next year. And when I came here last fall, I saw the projection was for level, and I saw what spring enrollment was, and my eyes went up in my head because I knew it was impossible. When you're in a decline, it's very difficult to get out of it because as you're going down, you have fewer students to come back. And unless you have a huge increase in new students, which is very difficult given the economy and the demographics, you're not going to see level budgets from year to year. Okay, another bit of good news. Our graduates are graduating taking fewer extraneous credits. So over the past 4 years, that has moved down only about 2 credits per student extra that they're taking, which doesn't seem like a whole bunch. But what you're not seeing here is on the other end, students are coming in with on average 2 more credits than they did 4 or 5 years ago. So for a graduating class of 1,100 students, that's over 4,000 credits fewer that they're taking over their time here. Another bit of pressure on our enrollment and on our budget. Okay, and these are some numbers that I know Mike presented at PSO last month, but I just wanted to go through them as well, just kind of put us in context with the other community colleges in the state. This is the overall enrollment picture over the last 5 years, and you can see that other than Columbia Green, of the local colleges, we have had the largest decline. System-wide, the decline's just under 20%. Our decline is almost 27%. If we include our concurrent students, however, we're right about at the average of the state, because our concurrent student enrollment has been growing over 30% over that same time, which helps us in terms of the budget, in terms of FTEs for the next year. So at least in that way, we're right about at the average. And the final piece I wanted to show is just where our biggest declines have been, which is in the 25 plus area. We've declined nearly 40% over the past 5 years. That's higher than any of the other local colleges. Indeed, it's the highest of any of the community colleges in the state. So we've been having a great deal of difficulty attracting that audience. And so between that, the low unemployment rates, the lower number of high school graduates, and our own increased efficiency, there are a bunch of factors working against us moving forward in enrollment, and that's why we have the budget picture that we're going to be seeing today. Any questions? Yeah. That's absolutely the case. The older 25 plus group, they take about double the online courses that the younger students do, and so our not having a robust online program absolutely hurts us with the older student population. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. I'll turn it back to Milton then.
Yeah, this is probably a story of good news, bad news, right? The good news is that the economy is strong and unemployment is under 5%. And the bad news is that the economy is strong and unemployment is under 5%, right? So, you know, that's the conundrum that we face when in a strong economy for community colleges, when students, you know, participate in larger percentages and in larger numbers, decide to join the workforce instead of coming to school. And someone mentioned an adult population, and that also has a large impact, because if there's a strong economy, then there's no need to retrain. When the economy is bad, we see more adults trying to come into community colleges and other types of institutes to try to retrain and regain skills that will then make them a little bit more marketable. You know, so now as we move into you know, our budget summary, what I want to explain exactly what is it that we're trying to do here, right? So this is not a spending plan. You know, you're not going to see a spending plan with a lot of details about where, what category we're spending our money, but what you're going to see is what we have been presenting to the board as part of our budget request. a couple of scenarios in comparison to what our current budget is. We haven't decided, we don't have an actual one scenario yet that we're going to push forward to our county sponsors yet. So you're at a time when we are also having some conversations with the board about what our budget request is and what it could look like for next budget year. So, I had mentioned earlier that many of our finance in here is enrollment dependent, but here are our main funding sources: student tuition, county chargeback revenue, which is also student tuition for students that come from other places, the state aid with basic and supplemental, which is again something that is enrollment based. We have offset revenues, which are mostly a lot of them are fees that students pay and others, and that becomes our fee revenue. And other revenue is mostly community services. That would be what would be included in that category. So we had to have some budget assumptions to create our budget scenarios. So you see three columns. The first column on the left is what our adopted budget currently is, with a state-based aid rate of $27.47. Our sponsor contribution of $14.5 million, the tuition of $36.96, and what the part-time tuition is. So that's not, even though it says tuition increase there, that's just what our tuition currently is. So we have on scenario one of the assumptions, and this is already done, is that the state-based aid has increased by $100. So we're going to get $28.47 per FTE. We're going to request from our sponsor, under this scenario, $1.75 additional $million. So maybe we can increase that to about $60 million, the anticipated sponsor contribution. And then we've also included a modest tuition increase of about $168 a year. So that's, it's not something onerous, and also part-time tuition increase of $7 per credit. So instead of $154, it would be $151. Under scenario two, the state-based aid will remain the same. It's going to be $28.47 for next year. In this scenario, we foresee requesting $1.5 million from our county sponsor, but with a slight tweak in our tuition request and to $200 per year, and the part-time tuition at $8 increase from $7. The construction of our revenues, as you will see in the next page, is based on a decline of 5.2% for full-time students for next academic year, and a decline of 5.6% for part-time on the credits. So keep that in mind when you look at this next page. So on this page, what you see is our adopted budget, and it kind of breaks down the overall tuition by semesters and when it is earned. Fall tuition, winter tuition, you can see that, non-resident tuition. And then, our sponsor contribution is there again on the left-hand side, and so the other revenue. So it kind of tells you that our overall revenue for this year is $61.6 million, almost $61.7. Under scenario one, this is where we will see some differences because of the sponsor contribution and the tuition increase of $168. This is what we anticipate, again, on a broken down by semesters for each one on the tuition revenue. And so overall, we anticipate an increase in revenues there if, under this scenario, of $63 million, it would be what we're looking for, which is a little over close to $2 million, a little under that over what we had this semester. Under scenario two, again, the tweak is very small, $500,000 on sponsor contribution, so that's something that we would have to deduct from the overall request at the bottom and try to make up a little bit with the $200 per year increase. So any questions so far on our projected revenue? Yes.
So do both scenarios
Well, let me go through the presentation. This is the revenue part, and the next part will be our expenditures. So then we can talk a little bit more about what that will be. You're getting to the end. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a formula, and so I think that part of this formula, I'm told, includes the sponsor contribution. So if the sponsor contribution increases, that's taken into consideration as well. But I don't know all the rest of the other details. Quite frankly, this is something that I'm learning as I go along. This just kind of shows, this is our adopted budget. This is a pie chart of our adopted budget, and it just kind of tells us, you can see the percentages and the amounts of dollars of what constitutes our revenue. So if you look at tuition, if you look at state aid, if you look at chargeback revenue, right, these are some of the things, and offset revenue. These are the revenues, really, that are completely enrollment dependent, and if you add up the percentages, that's going to add up to at least 75% or more, right? So it kind of really shows how dependent on enrollment community colleges are, and this one is no exception in that regard. This one kind of shows both scenario 1 and 2. It's kind of revenue neutral, so this is going to probably be the same one. Well, actually, it's not. Bad of me. So this one again shows what our revenue would be, what constitutes our revenue under scenario 1, and again, it's the percentages, don't come below 70%. When it comes to being enrollment dependent. Scenario 2 is more of the same, just slight changes in the actual dollar amounts, but the percentage, and slight changes in some of the percentages. But again, the pattern that we're seeing here is that it is heavily enrollment dependent. So we go to our expenditures, right? So these expenditures are in broad categories, as I mentioned earlier. These are the categories that we're presenting to the board as we prepare our budget request. And so we have expenditures in our adopted budget of you could see personnel, benefits, equipment, and our contractual expenses, which are maintenance contracts and things, utilities and things of that nature, your supplies, et cetera, insurance, all of that. And so it shows that we anticipate expenditures of let's say $63.3 million for this year under our current adopted budget. That, of course, will increase for next year, regardless of the scenarios that is adopted by the board. So as you can see, it's close to $40 million on personnel, and we anticipate overall expenditures to be about $65.8 million under this scenario. And really, that's really what doesn't change under scenario 2 is the expenditures. So when I misspoke when I said it wasn't the revenue. The revenue will change, but not the expenditures for both scenarios. So this kind of tells you, again, this pie chart shows where most of our resources are going in terms of our expenditures. So this is for the current adopted budget that we have for 2017 and 2018. So you can see our personnel services is about 60%. Our benefits is about 23%. So combined, that kind of makes up a little bit over 80% of our budget. And our contractual expenses is around 16%. That's under the current budget. In terms of the future and the scenarios that we are presenting to the board, that's not going to change much. There's no difference between scenario 1 and 2 when it comes to the expenditures. It's again, the same, 39 million for personnel, 16 16 million for benefits, and contractual expenses, 9.8. So again, you can see that, personnel services is over 80% of our overall expenditures. So, in summary, I would say that the total operating revenue for DCC that was funded this year, I'm going to come back to that just so that you could see it again, is $61.7 million, just to round that off. Under Scenario 1, 63.4. Under Scenario 2, 63.2. When we look at the total appropriations that we receive, again 63.3, let's say 65.8 is what we anticipate, and 65.8 again under Scenario 2. So now this will answer the question that Howard asked, and really, throughout, my understanding is throughout the history of this institution, when budgets are constructed, that use of fund balance has always been part of the budget plan. So sometimes the use of the word deficit is a misnomer, because if you plan to use it, and at one point in time, it was encouraged that the fund balance be lower because it seemed to be too high, and that has an impact when you go and make requests from your county sponsors. If you have terrifically healthy fund balances, then why would you want any more money? Kind of use some of your money. So that's that's also something that we have to kind of keep in mind as we look at some of these figures. So we anticipate that we will use approximately $1.592 million of our fund balance for this year. Again, that's an anticipation. We won't really know until the budget year is over, and then we go back and kind of look at all of our expenditures, and then compare those expenditures, align those expenditures with our projected budget, and then we will know for sure what we actually use from the fund balance. So we anticipate to have a fund balance at the end of August of $9.5 million, which is 15% of what our overall budget was for expended, and that's a little bit on the high side, quite frankly, because what they recommend is between 65% and 15%. I mean, that's okay. It's within the range, but minimum they recommend that at least we maintain a minimum of 5% fund balance from over-year expenditures. As we project on both scenarios that we're looking at here, well, we anticipate under both of these scenarios that we will use a little bit more than in previous years of our fund balance. The overall balance and the percentage of the balance is within the range of what the board wants and what is recommended for fund balances in higher education, again, which is between 5 and 10%. So all of these ranges, are within what is considered acceptable for fund balances in higher education. And these are the summaries, the budget summaries, or budget requests that we have been discussing with the board over the last month, and we'll continue to do so until we finalize which one of the two scenarios will be the one that we will go forward with to make our request to the county legislature. Questions? Yes. Well, you see, that's well, one of the things that one of the unique things that happens here is that equipment resources are set aside to be there's a certain amount of budget that is set aside here strictly for equipment. So we have to take a look and balance that versus the needs. I mean, so we don't know yet what all the requests are. I mean, we have to balance the requests that we have versus what the money that is available. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we might have budgeted $500,000 in the past and not spend it, right? So we have to, balance request with resources. Yes, Judy. Well, hard to predict, what our fund balance is going to look like right now, but it's the reason why. I mean, the 5 to 10% is an acceptable it's an acceptable figure because sometimes things happen, and sometimes, like right now, the state-based aid has increased. Right? Despite that increase, we can anticipate less base aid overall because our enrollment is going to decline, right? But sometimes there has been years when the state-based aid has decreased as well, right? So, you have to, it's always a good idea to have some fund balance to force, to save for a rainy day or some unforeseen expenditures or circumstances that may occur. So, yes, you can use some fund balances for one-time capital expenditures as well, but all of this should be part of an overall long-term plan. Yes, sir. Well, look, we have some challenges. We have some challenges. I think that, Scott showed you, the enrollment trends here, but he also mentioned something that somebody around here mentioned that can be of help, right? Why are we reducing faster than others? Part of what he mentioned, I think, was that online had a lot to do with that, particularly or the lack of online, or whatever, online courses had a lot to do with that with regards to certain populations, So while I am not advocating for that necessarily, I'm just pointing out that there are some things that are within our power that we can do to have an impact on enrollment decline. And I don't have a list of answers for all of the things that can be done to alleviate the enrollment decline. I would hope that that's a larger conversation that would involve, this is an institutional-wide problem, so I think that that's going to involve an institutional-wide conversation, but certainly I would hope that ideas emerge over time that can assist us with this. So I think that what Scott showed within his projections is that if we do nothing, right, and we continue to just rely on the regular high school graduating population, that the trend, this is what this trend is looking like, right? And so I would hope that we wouldn't sit here and do nothing, right? So, go ahead, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Well, no, it doesn't. But you're right in one sense. I mean, I think that those of us who are old enough, have lived through a lot of cycles of inflation, good economies, bad economies. So we know that they do happen. Again, nobody's wishing for that necessarily. So I think that in the best of worlds, then we try to look for where else can we get population. Where else our students. Is it online? Is it programs? Is it working with industry? Right. I know that we have a significant impact in the economy of this county. Right? That's for sure. And so maybe doing another economic impact on of what this institution does for the county might be helpful to some. Trying to find out, what the industry needs are. We're going to be doing a master plan. We have an RFP for a master plan this week. Some of the potential bidders were on campus. They took a tour, and as part of that master plan, we are including an academic master plan to be done as well, right? And the provost will lead that as well. She'll be part of the steering committee. But so some ideas might emerge, from that as well. About when you do an environmental scan or a survey of what the industry is around here, some ideas might emerge about the needs of industry and potential either certificate programs. Those are the easiest ones, obviously, or other types of skill sets that they have need for in their workforce, and we might be able to participate in that as well. So there are things that we can do, and hopefully that will serve as a guide for us. Yes, sir.
So I have the annual financial statements for the year ending August 31st, 2017. So I'm assuming that our fiscal year is going to be ending in about 3.5 months.
Yes.
So based on the budget, there's actual budget, and then there's actual,
Mhm.
and there's a variance. Are we good?
I didn't bring a variance report here. I don't know if Donna has the last variance report that we presented to the board. But from our perspective, I think that we're not going to spend as much the last time that I looked, and so we're very hopeful that we're not going to use the fund balance that we anticipated that we would use. Go ahead.
So we have the dorm, we have the debt. The dorm is listed as a $24 million loan report. So, and then the payments are scheduled to start increasing after 2022 to some degree. So what percentage of debt service is part of that contractual part of the budget? And do you see that growing over time?
Okay, so that's a great question. The answer is 0, right? Because the residence hall is being run through the Dutchess Community College Association, and it's not carried in the books of the college necessarily. So it's done through the association. I don't know if that answers your question, or it should answer part of your question as far as the now with regards to when you can anticipate bonding to increase, payments to increase. We have the opportunity to swap rates, and we've done that already on a couple of occasions. So that should help also with the debt service. Yes. It's been working out so far, but we hope that they can continue to work out for us.
Personnel records that we saw was about 60% of the total budget. So how much of that is covered by CSEA B contracts versus management confidential?
So I would say manager confidential is about $3 million. CSCA is about 9.2 million. And what was the other category that you mentioned? Do. Well, do here is also composed of the non-teaching administrators, right? So I have it broken down by that. Let me see. It's do is about $10.7 million for faculty. Adjuncts is about 3.8. Extra service faculty is close to $1 million. NTEs is about $5.4 million. Any other details that you would like?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So, I know you have
So that's a good question. I really don't know, but a lot of that stuff, the rankings are also based not just on quantity of money, right? Because there's different enrollment in different institutions, but also on percentages. But we were probably around the middle. But I can't. But I can. I'll tell you what. If you're really interested in that, email me and I'll get you the correct answer. Okay. That is one that I did not bring.
This is more for Scott, but I think, Scott, you said returning student numbers are going down faster than, and that's as far as I got.
Faster than new student numbers over the
Than
past
the
couple
number
of
of
years.
students coming in. And are you, the conjecture why?
Some of it is we're getting people through more quickly. We have been for 4 or 5 years, we've had increases in retention rates. Last year we did have a dip, but a good chunk of it is that people are getting through more quickly and not taking as much.
Of course, I mean, it is kind of that
Yes.
catch-22,
Yes, it is.
because as we become more effective at getting them through, it's less tuition coming in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's true, too. Yeah.
I haven't even looked at that.
There was that other revenue of like 1.1 or 1.5 million. What kind of things are other revenue?
Yeah, that was. I thought I mentioned it earlier. That's mostly community service. Continuing ed, that the revenue that comes from there, through the services that they offer to the community. Let me go for him.
Can you put into the revenue slide, it looked like it was about 400,000, and you were projecting it to go up to 600,000
I'm sorry, which
year over year. I think it was maybe one of the first ones.
revenue? Here's the revenue slide.
For the non-resident out-of-state is projected to increase almost 50% year over year. Is that right? Is there a reason for that?
Well, part of it, because once you increase tuition is basically double for out-of-state residents as well. We have had some conversations about trying to bring in students from nearby states like Connecticut, right? And we've also talked about New Jersey and Pennsylvania. We do have a student housing, a residence hall that will help us with that type of recruitment if students want to come here from out of state, or even for international students as well. And we do have some international students here as well. But as to the very detailed, I can't tell you, every single detail that went into estimating that particular revenue. Yeah, you. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So one thing happens without revenue. So where do you see, because you're new, you decided to catch kind of eyes on the budget, where do you see chances for revenue growth that we're not doing, or maybe we do more of?
Well, as you could see, that the bulk of the revenue is enrollment driven. So again, I don't have the answers for things that we can do to increase enrollment. Scott mentioned that we're victims of our own success as well, right? Because if we get students out early, that means that they don't return to us. So that's been having a little bit of a negative impact. But we need to expand our horizon when it comes to. We need to put on a different type of lens when it comes to enrollment, right? But we have some restrictions as well, right? Because I think that you can't poach from other counties. Those things are kind of like frowned upon. So we have to look at other, look around. A lot of people are talking about Western Connecticut State, for example, these days, and how they've been offering New York State residents from around the area some discounts so that they can go there, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at the enrollment of Western Connecticut State, it's smaller than ours. And it is smaller than even what Scott projected ours will be 5 years from now, right? So they're a small institution. Right? So yes, they are a 4-year institution. So, and they cost more than we do. So I think that we can be highly competitive from the perspective of our price point, right? Because there's only right now 2 community colleges in the state that have tuition under $4,000, Schenectady and Dutchess, right? Now, there's a lot of pride involved within the county and others about the fact that we are the lowest tuition. We offer the lowest tuition rate of all the SUNY systems. So, so if that's the case, then somebody has to step up as well. And this is something that, we need. This is a message that we also need to communicate to our county sponsors. That, if that's something that is extremely important to them, then we're going to need their help as well over time. So, one of the things that I said earlier, right, was that through the master plan, right, we're going to have the consultant who wins the bid, right, also take a look at the academics and see, where there might be opportunities. And so, that's one vehicle that we're looking forward to see whether there are such opportunities, and where those opportunities may be. Yes. Absolutely. If you have ideas on how to generate revenue. So I'll tell you this, with the limited time that I have been here, I will, and others that have been here longer and have more experience than me here can answer, right? I think that the institution has done a wonderful job in reaching out to the community to use the facilities here. Both organizations that pay and organizations that need assistance. So for example, in March, we hosted a Latino forum. That brought in together many organizations from the Latino community in Dutchess County, and I thought that's a great contribution that we make. So we have to balance the use of our facilities as well within what our needs are from the perspective of our mission, which is educational in nature, and then we have our own set of activities that we do. Students, some of the other departments also have activities. So we do have a scheduler, I think, that that can be contacted to see when our facilities are available, and if they are, what the rates are. So that does exist. As far as I know. I'm sorry, somebody back. that I don't know. I don't have enough information on the status of our concurrent students and the socioeconomic status of these students to know whether that's something that that we should be moving towards. To be honest, so I'm sorry that I can't give you a better answer. So I mean, that's a great question, and I'm sure that there are people here who can answer that question probably better than me because, I'm not a faculty member to know or to know what kind of programs I would like to see here, right? That's it's and just coming in here again, I said I think we need to see what type of programs are a good fit for the institution. Just because something is low hanging doesn't mean that that you should do it, right? There's a lot of grants out there that come with like some landmines, for example, right? So just because there's money doesn't mean that you have to chase it, right? So we have to be intentional about what programs we may want to add, and it has to be something that involves a larger conversation, as opposed to just rushing out to do something, right? Like, for example, I think I had a conversation with Scott one time about gaming, right? And other institutions, that seems to be a real popular type of majors, right? So I asked Scott, do you think there's any interest, students who are leaving the county, where are they going, what are their major, can we find that out? And he says, I found one student, right? Is that? For gaming, right, in the last 5 years. So something that I thought that has worked well in urban centers, for example, right? That's here, based upon data, may not work, right? So that's why we have to be careful, and I would rather wait until we do a plan that takes into consideration, survey the landscape, get some data. I've always, one of my favorite sayings is, "In God we trust, all others need data," right? And so, we have to, make decisions that, that are good decisions for us, and we have to have the information.
Probably more a question for Scott, but picking up on Chrissy's question, knowing that we have so many high school students taking concurrent classes, how does that track with the people who take summer classes? Like, are the summer students mostly DCC students, or like these high school students took credit here so that they could get a head start on college? How many of them are we able to kind of, knowing they go off to a four-year school somewhere, how many of them do we get back in the summer?
I haven't looked at that, but I don't think it's a huge percentage. I think how the summer is mostly ECC and other students coming back, going somewhere else. I think it's mostly ECC.
Can you reiterate what kind of things fall under chargeback revenue?
Chargeback revenue is a revenue that is charged to residents of other counties that come to DCC. Correct. Non-resident tuition, basically, that we charge back to their county. For example, I'll give you an example. My daughter graduated from here, so every semester she had to bring a certificate, that showed that she was a resident of Orange County who was studying out of county, and I'm sure that for her attendance here, the college charged back Orange County for educating for her attendance here. So that's the best example that I can give you, because we had to do that every.
So it looks like, looking over the revenue, other than possibly sponsorship contributing to contributions, most of our increase in revenue is non-resident and chargeback. Is that accurate?
Yes, based upon, because remember, one of the things that I mentioned earlier when somebody asked about the formula was that it's also dependent upon what the county gives to, to us, so yes. And also, if the tuition goes up, then the chargeback will also go, will be higher.
I know it's in first year, but is there any study of how Excelsior has affected us?
It's not been studied, but I can tell you that it's pretty significant. We've lost, for example, this year we had, I don't remember exactly, but quite a few fewer Franklin scholars. We actually, for the first time in the last decade, have fewer students coming in with more credits to earn in high school. And so we're losing some of the top tier students presently like the board.
There hasn't been so updated, in particular, it always bothers me a bit that we market ourselves as the cheapest in the state. And I hear what you're saying, and I'm glad you said that, because that's a point of pride for me, our county legislature. And I get it. But, I'm not saying that we have to say, oh, well, let's put the tuition up a lot, but can we market ourselves? If we do this, in other words, like with Excelsior, the low tuition used to be a draw. Because we had lower tuition. Somebody that was in that financial area that basically potentially choose to come here. And as Scott just said, the Conference College, they would choose to come here. But we've lost that edge. And I have not seen any change in our marketing in terms of that. Is that in the work? Because many of us, from a faculty point of view, have said for many, many, many years that we ought to be marketing our strengths as opposed to our low tuition. And, if we're going to compete against Excelsior, because seriously, if you can get Excelsior, you can go to a four-year school. Poor students are paying to transfer. Why wouldn't they just go to a four-year school? I mean, this reason is fairly obvious. If I'm coming to Dutchess because I couldn't afford the four-year school, and this would get me a good education, then I'll transfer. Excelsior is kind of taking that up as a playing field, right? I mean, if you get the Excelsior scholarship, meaning that that's no longer.
So to that point, I think that you're absolutely right. Students who have skill. Oh, I'll let Michael take that one. Thank you, Michael, for
I'll take your plug on that.
and
Since Excelsior, that is not something that, we don't put that open and say, oh, it's free to pay or any of that, because we have not that free. So if you think $500 pair of shoes, if I'll buy you $100 pair of shoes, or I'll buy you $50 pair of shoes, this pair of shoes, unless the $50 pair came with support and all the other things that you needed in addition to the tutor, right? So that's where we turn what we're doing, and this is where we talk about, we have these containers, it's where we talk about faculty, and it's all about support, and it's all about the environment here. It's not about. Can I just say, I used to know a lot more of this stuff because I used to go to the board meetings every month, and, I'm happy that my thinking is that. But part of me feels like, I would know stuff like that because it's presented at the board. Can I ask for that type of idea to be presented during the diversity tour? Because I want to know that. Well, that's all because some of the translations to the that we're not using this because I got marketing. Well, so yes, but I got to know, yeah. Oh, I have Facebook and Instagram, UCC.
Everyone,
Not our demographic, sorry.
everyone should go to the YouTube channel and look at the videos of the faculty, of the students, because not once does it say lowest tuition in the state, not once it pushes the message of quality, and we're out talking to students. We talk about academic, social, and financial fit, and that's the conversation we have with students. We don't talk about, we don't lead with lowest tuition anymore. We lead with 9 out of 10 student
But
surveys.
there's some place where that is where it's
Yeah,
on, but I always somewhere, and then the rest of
yeah,
it.
maybe it's somewhere there, but the YouTube channel has a lot of emphasis on faculty. It's done a great job with videos, and
I think the board understands that. But elected officials may not. So that's the conundrum. Anybody else? Going once? This,
Well, I'm just, in terms of the marketing and the understanding, it sounds here it's only for full-time students, and if the demographic that we're losing is under 25, most of those students are probably part-time students, or over 25, that are part-time students who probably wouldn't qualify for the voucher anyway, so trying to correctly target the right population that is over 25 still wants to have affordable, and that's basically.
so, I mean,
Are the adult students also drawn to hybrids? Is there any data on that? Are they more drawn to hybrids? That seems an area that we could ramp
Particularly if
up
it mixes
where-
with Saturdays and evenings.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so based on concurrence, I know is it a wash whether we actually, if we increase more concurrent offerings versus cut back, is it sort of a wash for us, or do we actually gain more by offering more concurrent? Because it seems though if the high school students have more credits and they're bypassing us, we might be kind of chopping off our feet here, so.
It's a double-edged sword. We certainly gain FTEs, and I think the last I read, that's like 2 million.
Compared to what we might be losing.
But
There probably hasn't been a cost comparison.
I've done a little bit of work.
A little bit of stuff.
Okay, so even though if we're getting the same percentage of concurrent students, what's happened over time is more of the students end up discounting our concurrent. 5 years ago, it was under 30%, now it's close to half. So even though our percentage is staying the same, the percentage of non-concurrent students, you get a much higher percentage. So the mix of students that got discounted is changing because of that.
Can I add to that, there are other schools who can second.
Right.
So
We don't have
we
that.
cut back, but we don't.
I think Putnam might be a good. Go ahead, good, thank you.
Thank Vice President Santiago and staff for the budget presentation, and just to put an exclamation point on it. Enrollment matters a great deal to us, and we're going to need everybody's ideas about how we better serve populations who are here in Dutchess County currently aren't taking advantage of this excellent resource that was very fast. So what can we do in, for example, the city of Poughkeepsie and other areas where we have large numbers of the population who need post-secondary credentials, but, don't find themselves here. So there's that piece of it. So all of the good ideas about that. The academic and ability master planning process is so critical to the future of this institution, and we really, need all of your input and ideas as we go through that process. Ultimately, a budget is a political document, and this, our board, to its credit, is committed to pushing the county legislature to increase the contribution to the institution. Because, for historical context, the 7 years before I became president, we didn't ask the county for any increases. So we gave them a 5-year budget, and we told them we were going to ask them for an additional $1 million every year. And they've more than come through with that. And we've been, very strategic about aligning what we're doing with the town. And so that's really important. It continues to be a very dynamic political concept. We have a county executive who's, running for governor. We have had turnover with the county legislature. But when they were on campus recently, we had a lot of county leadership on campus. so very excited about what is happening in our classroom. You know, interacting in the material testing lab, in science laboratories, the food pantry, you know, um, this is what they need to see in order for them to say, this is a priority for the county, and as the constituents who, you know, they go up for election every 2 years. For them, you know, we need to be able to justify what they're doing. Our 5-year projection, which we didn't, you know, go into today, the big sign of the enrollment loss was devastating for our budget. And, you know, and I would be remiss the president not to point that out, that, you know, I believe what God is, you know, God is really strongly there at this point. Unless we have new programming, new populations, and an increased enrollment, the way that our budget is currently built is, you know, it will result in some really difficult choices for us. So we got some time, we have important planning process, let's use this opportunity to pull together and, you know, let's consider, you know, new ways of reaching more people, and then I think we're going to be fine. Yeah.
You might need a budget advisory committee. You have TAC, you got DAC, you got, you know, SNAC, whatever. But I think you need, I think you need, if you're looking for ideas, you need regular communication around finance. Budget advisory.
I'm not opposed to that, John.
Yeah, well, I was talking to, I know some people did, but I was talking to my colleague, Mary Ann Johnson, who just finished a course where, he was focused on the fact that, this population is growing now, thinks we're moving differently because we actually grew up with technology. I mean, my kids had technology introduced into their lives, you know, when they were at the end, you know, I don't know, middle school, let's just say. And is there some ways that we can have some type of, I don't know, like, we need to think about that as we think about our master plan and our academic master plan. I don't know how to think differently, and I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with her and say, okay, what is the research showing? Can somebody help organize that, for more of us to learn about that? Because that would make a huge difference. When I'm thinking about a classroom, I mean, it really woke me up. I was just like, wait a second, you guys, like, these students have not, they've had technology since they were one. And that's completely different from the students that we've been teaching, you know. And I think that the research, I guess, I don't know, I don't know, and the short conversation has shown that they learn differently because of that. I'm not familiar with what that means, but they certainly could mean something different, like the type of, you know, environment that's created. So,
Your point is well taken, that some of it is educating ourselves. And really, like, I'm encouraging people to go look at other people's, you know, environments, you know, other, you know, some of the time this summer, if you have an opportunity to be near another community college or university setting, go look at their science lab, their math lab, their libraries, their student centers, you know, let's, you know, just some fresh eyes, you know, fresh ideas about, you know, what would help us here. And if we no longer have a price advantage, which, you know, is absolutely clear, if consistent across the community colleges or Excelsior, you know, is really undermining community colleges within New York. I think, you know, as an unintended consequence, and the president and the chancellor are going to be taking this up meeting in the next 2 months. So, you know, we're looking at possibilities of creating a new kind of incentive for students. But we need to talk to, you know, we're, you know, everything is on the table. So we'll take that suggestion, and if there's, you know, how are students learning differently, how, you know, what should a good adaptable classroom look like, ability that brought, because we really, people come on campus think that this is lovely, this is a nice place to learn, so how do we continue to do that going forward? Especially for those of you who are going to inherit this institution. The ones who are going to be here in the next 10, 20 years, you're building your college. So don't let, in your hands. I need your help with this process. So, it's not all good news, but we're strong, we're resilient, we're smart, and we're going to make it through this session. So with that, I'm going to close today's budget forum with the idea that we will continue to have this conversation as this continues to play out. But, right now, we're, our board is going to push for as much as possible from our county sponsor. So it can reduce pressure on our students, and simply because we need it for our bottom line. So to the extent that you're in touch with your own county administrator